My name is Naja Shahab. I am MPA's Climate Equity Coordinator. We can go into a roll call. I feel like, go ahead.
Sure. Harrison Palmer, Executive Secretary of Boards and Commissions, MDA.
Martin Prue, Value-Added Agricultural Specialist with the Maryland Department of Agriculture.
And Bonnie Rachel Jones, Director of Government Relations here at MPA.
And no order across the screen, Joe.
Joe Malone, Agricultural Programs Manager, Maryland Department of Commerce.
Thank you, Joanne.
Joanne Chasen, Vice President, Maryland Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Craig.
Craig Humble, Director of Environmental Health, Garrett County, representing health officers.
Thank you, and Justin.
Sorry, guys, I am on the way and following the GPS, but I am Jessica Richards. I'm an at-large member, but I also work with Tri-County Council for Southern Maryland.
Excellent. Thank you.
And before we go on to the approval of the December 2024 minutes, I'm actually going to turn it over to Harrison for some administrative updates.
Thank you, Nadia. Just a couple of brief administrative updates. The commission is made up of appointed members of the general public, appointed by the governor. Representatives of entities also appointed by the governor, and those are the appointed membership on the agenda. It's on the second page. You'll see voting members, seat name, and appointee. Excuse me. And throughout the proceedings, those will be the folks that are eligible to vote on minutes, adjournment, and other items of business. There are also advisory agencies that were written into the executive order initially in 2006 to include the secretaries and their designees. And there is a pending executive order that will expand that list for other agencies. For the folks just moving forward as we look into the minutes for approval, the appointed members that are currently on are Joanne and Jessica. So you all will be the ones responsible for making motions and seconds for the sake of today's meeting. Okay, back to you.
All right. Has everyone had the chance to review the minutes from the meeting in December? And if there are no changes or updates to be made, can we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll go ahead and make that motion to approve the minutes as presented.
And then
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? It is approved.
Aye.
We can go into the committee discussion. First topic on our agenda was Sunday hunting. We were waiting on an update for DNR, particularly concerning the deer harvest update for the 2023 and 2024 season.
You're gonna get back on.
Suzanne's not going to be able to join us. She'll be with us for the very last meeting, but not for this one.
Okay.
And Paul didn't respond.
Okay. So maybe we'll kick it down to the Wisconsin discussion.
So we're gonna skip ahead to the giant miscanthus discussion. I'm assuming this is an update from Commerce as well. I'll hand it over to Joe in that case.
Sure, and just for a little bit of feedback at the last GICA meeting, and I think in some subsequent discussions, we had talked about the use of giant miscanthus as an alternative crop in high salinity areas, and then looking at some other uses for it. We've had some very brief initial conversations with some contacts over at the University of Maryland's Interdisciplinary Studies Department, where they've been talking with other states that are interested in importing giant miscanthus as an alternative woody biomass product. And so as we're looking forward at some of the benefits of miscanthus and looking at some of the commercialization of it, we think that there's a pretty large opportunity for crossover between commerce and helping navigate some of those business relationships when in interstate commerce, and then also leaning into some of the best management practices for land retirement, particularly looking at the high salinity areas in the state. to plant giant miscanthus, it's going to be a more attractive market if we can monetize it, frankly, and give farmers a real benefit. I think right now the folks that are using miscanthus have contracts with Purdue, but they're a bit tapped out. So looking at how we can increase that acreage and increase that market. Joe, I didn't know if you had any ideas for that discussion, or if there were some topics that may be coming through.
Yeah, I don't have anything too specific, but I would just like to stress Commerce's interest in identifying new markets for resource-based products and agricultural products across the state, including biofuels. And miscanthus seems like a promising opportunity for bioproducts in general. And so we definitely would like to keep the conversation going and engage our partners to maintain forward momentum on seeing the viability of this. I'm aware of a few producers that are trying this new system out with growing miscanthus, and I'm really excited to learn more and keep those conversations going. That's all that I have related to miscanthus.
Excellent. Thank you. As we're looking at some of these conversations, and I know we are meeting with some folks over at UMB next week. What are some best recommendations from you on how to lead you guys in on that discussion and kind of make those market connections as we move forward?
Yeah, I would say definitely involve Commerce within those conversations as you see fit. Identifying those limiting factors which could help expand the market opportunities for new cropping systems, I think, is a conversation that Commerce would like to be involved in, specifically identifying those pinch points that are holding back production and entrance to these new markets. So, yeah, I would love to be a part of those conversations as you see fit.
Excellent. What are you doing Monday around 11:30?
Send me an email. I can definitely clear my schedule and make it work.
Excellent. I will give you a follow-up on that piece to see what we're doing on the Commerce side and hear a bit about what they're seeing in terms of the interstate transport opportunity. Of course, is there anything else on the agenda without DNR and MDE to get into?
Discuss the welcome issues on the list today. You could move them to, or for the benefit of the members, the public members of the committee, perhaps we can still discuss some of these things. Let's start with Sunday hunting. So even though we don't have GNR here with us to give us the updates on the harvest from the 2023 through 2024 season, which would have ended in January, or their upcoming projections, what I will say is that every year during the legislative session, there are various Sunday hunting deer bills that come up, and this year there were quite a few. Every county in the state has different local laws, different state laws just for that jurisdiction that specify how you can hunt, what you can hunt, when you can hunt during the October through January hunting season. And so it specifies when you can use a bow, when you can use a long gun, all of that, and whether or not you can use that for deer or for fowl, wild birds, what have you. And so while the Senate seemed very reluctant to pass any of those bills, I think the House had more of a desire to pass them, but there was just not enough agreement. There was opposition from various groups, particularly from the equine industry, the Maryland Horse Council, and folks who say, well, we own horses, but we ride all across the state, and we are opposed to the expansion of Sunday hunting in any county because we could ride our horses in any county in any given day. And then you had proponents of the bill saying, hey, well, this is our local jurisdiction. We like the expansion of hunting on Sundays here for this variety of reasons. It's the only day of the week that people have for recreation. If they're spending time with their families on Saturdays and working Monday through Friday, Sunday is their really only opportunity to do some more hunting. And DNR often came in and said, well, yes, based on the numbers, there is an overpopulation of deer in certain jurisdictions, and it would be nice to be able to offer expanded Sunday hunting in these jurisdictions on Sundays. And so, but because there wasn't any agreement between opponents and proponents. One of the things that the vice chair of the House Environment and Transportation Committee did ask for is that she asked that DNR and MDA work over this interim period with both the advocates and opponents of Sunday hunting bills to come to some sort of agreement ahead of next year's legislative session, so that there are some parameters that can be worked out, some things that they can be prepared to agree on in advance that might allow some of those bills to actually pass for some of the local jurisdictions that seem to need it the most. And so DNR did reach out to me last week to ask for a designee from MDA for that subcommittee, that work group that's going to start convening with all sides of the argument so that they can make sure that by January of next year, there's some sort of solution worked out so that the bills don't just keep coming for every jurisdiction and none of them pass. So whether it means one package statewide that isn't a local bill that pertains to Sunday hunting in every county, or whether or not they narrow down the counties that need it most and just identify those in one bill. That's the goal of that particular upcoming work group. So be on the lookout for that. And if there's particular feedback that any of you feel like we should be sharing in that work group, please let us know. Cassie Shirk, one of our assistant secretaries here at MDA, is going to be our designee for that particular work group. Next on the agenda was the tree planting on state-owned agricultural land. I will say there were again a couple of pieces of legislation, even though DNR manages the program, and hopefully maybe we'll be able to get an update from someone by the end of this meeting. If not, we'll table it to the July meeting. But there were a couple of pieces of legislation that passed that reduced the funding for tree plantings. And so while we still anticipate DNR will continue working on this, we do have questions about state land versus private land for tree plantings. And we know that our funding here at MDA was cut significantly from $2.5 million for the Tree Solutions Now Fund to plant down to $500,000 annually to help with tree plantings on agricultural properties. And so that funding has been significantly reduced. And obviously that fund, that particular program here at MDA went towards helping DNR meet the 5 million tree goal.
I could add a brief update on that too. The Young Farmers Advisory Board Committee discussed this 2 weeks ago. But Andrew Amoruso is the DNR representative on there for forestry. He's a forester on the Eastern Shore. And so one of the pieces of discussion as they were going through their plans, we had asked about a strategic movement forward. What's going to be their priority? Where are they really looking to put these trees? And on the ag side, we've had complaints that DNR has taken productive agricultural land away from farmers and said, well, we're putting this into trees. And so he, informed us that their strategic plan included putting it on park property first, stuff that would not have impacts on productive agricultural land, But I think there's some other factors in there that I think we would want to get some more clarification on where those priorities are and what they're looking at. And is that going to be a circular piece as contracts end? Is that going to be an option that's considered moving forward? But you provide a little bit of context for that discussion too. So maybe we can look at the next meeting.
Sure. And I'm sorry, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, sure. I was on the internet, but I am now here. Just Richard.
Okay.
Trying to answer something.
Thank you, Jessica. I couldn't recall if we had met first here, so okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I'm good for traffic, and I forgot about break work. So.
No problem. Let's see.
I haven't heard anything different. I know they updated it 2 weeks ago and said they were still in the works, and that drafts will be published in June for public comment. Not quite sure about this either. I don't know if you know any different. Next would be the PFAS impacts on agriculture.
So I see we don't have Zach from MDE with us either. I know Zach he joined MDE a couple of months ago, and he and I have sat in on a couple of presentations on PFAS. We gave a joint briefing to the Health and Government Operations Committee during the legislative session on PFAS in the environment. And that briefing was at the request of the chair of the Health and Government Operations Committee, based on the fact that any bill that's PFAS related goes to their committee, which is a little bit different because most of the time we're discussing the environment and health, but the typical committees that environmental bills would go through do not hear the PFAS bills. HGO does. So we gave them a briefing. There was one particular bill that ended up not passing, but it was pertaining to PFAS in pesticides and the impact that certain levels of PFAS in farm and agricultural products could have on the environment. But that was based on the use of certain pesticides, not just on farm fields, but also in landscaping and for pest control at schools and other public facilities and things like that. And so what some of the state boards and commissions that are tasked with addressing PFAS, like I believe it's Children's Environmental Health Advisory Council, that's one of them, CPAC. There's also a pesticide advisory group. Those two commissions are tasked with looking at both the use of pesticides, but also other products that go into the environment that could potentially be harmful, particularly for children. And what I do know is that what they've asked us for recently, as of last week, the one committee would like for MDE and FDA to give a presentation on PFAS at one of their upcoming meetings this summer to discuss what each agency is doing to regulate PFAS. Obviously, here at MPA, we don't regulate PFAS. We can tell you what products are registered through our state chemist office for use on any of the entities that we regulate, like commercial and family farms, landscaping businesses, pest control companies. We know which products are registered for sale and use here in the state of Maryland. However, we don't have any data. We don't do any research. We don't have any facts or figures on the impacts of those products on the environment. We really do defer to MDE, who does do a little bit more research and have data. We defer to MDE and, of course, EPA regulations on what acceptable limits of PFAS are, knowing that they are chemical compounds that are prevalent and have been in society for decades. And they were chemicals designed not to break down, so that things could be waterproof and water resistant and stain proof and all of that. You name it, anything designed for durability in that kind of capacity has some sort of coating of PFAS on it, which is known now to be harmful to the environment, but also to have several health conditions tied to exposure to PFAS. And so we do rely on our relationship with MDE for them to, let us know what acceptable limits are. That was a discussion had by the legislature this session. There was a bill that would have basically banned the land application of soil conditioners or fertilizers that contain more than 1 part per billion of PFAS. That number was then changed to more than 1 microgram per kilogram of PFAS. And the bill ultimately didn't pass because there was a disagreement about wastewater treatment facilities, which MDE does regulate. There are several wastewater treatment facilities in the DMV area that produce a fertilizer or soil conditioner as a byproduct of their wastewater treatment. DC Water, for example, produces a product called Bloom, which is, a soil conditioner, but essentially think of it as a fertilizer that they sell to Maryland and Virginia farmers at a, really affordable rate compared to what those producers would pay at a typical store. They sell it at a very affordable rate because those wastewater treatment facilities really need to get it off their hands and they have no other means of disposing of it. And, but because PFAS is so prevalent in our society, again, because of the products, it's in the atmosphere. It is essentially the rainwater. It's in your home. It's in your rugs, your nonstick pans, your makeup, your waterproof jacket. It's in a lot of products down through the years, unless manufacturers have banned or found an alternative. It's in a lot of products. And so by default, the wastewater that ends up at these wastewater treatment facilities has a certain level of PFAS in it because it comes from the human body. At this point, wastewater treatment facilities also have to contend with a percentage of PFAS contamination that comes from manufacturers that they also receive wastewater from. So if you're a manufacturer for, I don't know, a clothing company or a seafood processing facility or any type of manufacturing facility, there are some companies that do still use chemicals that contain PFAS or compounds that contain PFAS in the manufacturing of their products. And so you add that to the wastewater that is already the byproduct of human waste that contains PFAS. And so many wastewater treatment facilities are already contending with how do they eliminate in their final processes, how do they eliminate or reduce to the extent possible the amount of PFAS is in any byproduct, and how do they get rid of that? Incinerating it just means a certain percentage of it would still end up flashing off into the air, into the environment. And so there are limited options right now, not enough technology to help mitigate eliminating PFAS in wastewater treatment. But the EPA has set acceptable limits of what is an acceptable limit for PFAS in the environment and in the human body. And the state of Maryland has sought to narrow that down. There are advocates who want to narrow that definition and say, even if the federal standard is, 1 part per billion, 2 part per billion, what have you, and don't quote me on that because I can't remember what the federal, what the current EPA acceptable limit is. However, I know that this year that was the goal, was to say here in Maryland, we would limit that and reduce the number of PFAS contaminants that we are continuing to introduce here in the state. And so that's an issue that's going to continue to be of ongoing importance and ongoing discussion between MDE, the legislature, MDA, and various other stakeholders. The next item on the list is something that we wanted to discuss with MDE that will, excuse me, and even DNR will follow up with them via email because we reached out. So about 2 weeks ago, myself and a couple of my colleagues here had an opportunity at the request of the Maryland National Capital Parks and Planning to visit a couple of parks in Prince George's County where they initially invited us to come and view some restorative landscaping projects that they've been doing in some of their public parks where they've cut down on mowing. So they've reduced their greenhouse gas emissions from mowing, but they've also allowed sort of natural landscaping to take place. They've put down wood chips, and the ecology of those particular sections of the park have really just come back. They've seen more wildlife, more native plants spring up. There's more moss growing on trees. All the things that they say are the reflection of a healthy ecosystem have now come back because they are simply not doing any mowing on about 20 acres or so of the 80 acres that they were previously mowing and managing at that particular park. But then it also sparked an opportunity for us to discuss some issues with stream restoration and erosion. So they had us come back a second time, and they took us to a couple of parks in the county that run parallel to Henson Creek. And so Henson Creek is a little body of water in Prince George's. Much of it, WSSC has the right of way for because there are pipelines that run within that creek or have been established in that creek that WSSC taps into, and so they have right of way over that particular body of water. However, it's much of those areas of those parks are in desperate need of stream restoration because erosion has caused much of their bike paths / walking paths to erode and essentially fall right into the creek. And so they've had to redirect paths and or close them off altogether. And they've had some difficulty making a connection with WSSC to have some of that restored. So that was something we were beginning discussions with MDE about to see whether or not Clean Water Commerce Act funding would help cover the cost of some of that stream restoration for that particular issue. And so that was something that we had on the agenda as well. And we've just discussed Ms. Candace. So I think that now takes us through all of what was on the agenda. Doesn't look like we have anyone still MD or DNR. Oh, great. Perfect timing. Okay.
Put Noni right on the spot. No worries.
Oh, you saved a seat.
Put you in the hot seat.
Yeah, that's scary. How are you? Fine. How are you doing?
Well, let's see you. None of you arrived at the perfect time. The agenda was very MDE heavy today.
I know. That's why I was trying to get here and I signed in and then, of course, I got a call from my boss. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I guess we can take it from the top. Okay.
Are there any, do you have any K-12 permanent updates?
I don't have them. I can get them. And that's what I wanted to talk about is probably get a representative more on here that works with the K-12 permits. So I told him I'd look into it, get back to the staff to see who would be the best person. So I can get that.
And if you could just send them my way when you get a chance, that'd be fantastic. We'll have them included on the next meetings.
Absolutely.
And then we've already covered this, but, the next on our agenda for MTE's input was PFAS impacts. That was mainly to follow up with Zach, who's not on the call, but, if you're interested to also what MTE is like any acceptable for this PFAS.
That's a loaded question. I'm just saying, put me on the hot seat right off. You know, we have a couple different avenues there. You know, when you're talking for agriculture, it can impact them from land, which that's part with the same representative with the K-food permits that could discuss that. And there's also surface water. We don't have a defined number on that yet, depending on if there's a discharge involved with surface water or an NPDES permit. And then we have groundwater, which we do go off the drinking water standards on that, which is it's 4. So it depends on the use, I guess, or what the need is. In some agricultural situations, you could be doing withdrawal of groundwater for their use. So that would be the 4 that would apply if it's for potable supply. So it's not as simple. It never is. That's just saying a one number for all factors. It depends on what the needs are, with the withdrawal of water or discharge of water, or an application of something that may have pretty costs in it. That's how you follow that.
Sounds like continued, but the next follow-up we had was something Rachel just covered. It was a stream restoration project that was based in PG County. I don't know if you want to.
Sure. So, Hines and Michael Hawkins and I visited a couple of parks. And Liv Hines reached out to ask for some feedback about whether or not clean water commerce funding could be used for some stream restoration projects, since it's they're public parks owned by the National Capital Parks and Planning. Parks and Planning managed by PG Parks and Recreation, and there's been an issue because WSSC has a right of way over the stream itself because of some of their pipelines, and WSSC hasn't seen those particular areas as a priority for them. However, it's a priority for the park because it's washing away literally their pathways, bike paths, and walking paths are falling, eroding right into the creek. And so they've had to spend money for multiple sets of fencing to put up to keep people from falling in. That's a public safety hazard to keep people from falling in, and they've had to spend money to repave or redirect the path once that happens. And so they're doing temporary fixes every couple of years and just watching as this continues to erode. WSFC over the past 2 or 3 years has found some areas that they've prioritized and they've put in the money for stream restoration projects, but those areas, aren't necessarily the areas of biggest need for the park system. And so the park system doesn't have the funding for it, but they are looking to see whether or not there's any state funding available. And so
the parks are county-owned parks or state-owned parks?
County.
Okay. And the area where the restoration needs to occur, is it within the WSSC's right of way?
Yes.
Just to make it a little more complicated.
Yes.
For me, right?
Yes.
I'm saying amenable to work being done as long as they don't have to pay for it.
Yes.
So I mean, just throw this out there. The bikeways grant's open right now until the 26th.
Is this the Tri County Council?
No, it's through
Through which agency? It's getting out of my face. I really, something I probably should pay attention to, but I did not say.
Say it, oh,
Latimer bikeways. Yeah, see that. The transportation path, so you probably have to make an argument that it's transportation and not entirely recreation.
but funded. So there's, you know, that on top of it.
So let me talk with the finance group and see if there are items for that. Thinking of what that would involve. Okay, great. Thank you. Yes, and we'll send you some additional information on that as well, because it's Henson Creek, so it's one creek, but it runs through several parks, and it's the same issue, and it's basically anywhere where the creek bends. When there's heavy rain, the water rushes through, and so right where that curve is, it just erodes the soil right away, and so again, it over time in certain areas they've had to redirect the path multiple times, and it's pretty bad. So we saw it firsthand. It took us to about 6 or 7 sites throughout 2 parks, and saw the damage firsthand. So, all right, let me look into that also. Get the connection for stream restorations through one of the science administration, that person, to see if she knows of any other methods, especially with the right of way issue. Okay, thank you. Yeah, we're told that WSSC has a list of priority projects that they've had to review for a couple of years. But that again, none of these sites were on WSSC's priority list, which means even when they do approve those projects, it's not funding. They're not gonna, yeah, they're not gonna fund these.
Last thing on our list for input from EDT was just GICA's campus. And this was previously discussed, just as an opportunity as a land retirement group.
Well, I'm in water sign, so I'm not the land person. So I want to know what a giant this is or whatever.
It's total grass. It's
Like a cross between a sorghum and a weed or
But twice as high.
yeah.
really?
It grows, yeah, 12 feet tall. You harvest it like silage, and if you get 3 or 4 pounds a year off of it, it's an enormous biomass producer that doesn't require a whole lot of nutrient input. It's perennial, so it keeps on coming back, and it's super salt tolerant as well. And so, University of Maryland Extension is doing a lot of research into different opportunities for land use, and as we're seeing saltwater intrusion and looking for other ways to continue to make land productive, this is a good option. We were talking a little bit with Joe Malone Commerce, and we've got some connections over at University of Maryland as well, in the geological service and interdisciplinary studies that are working with some states down south that are looking at this as a woody biomass alternative, and they can't get enough of it. Whereas we're looking at this as saying, well, this is an opportunity for us to be, putting this in as a buffer, using this as a land retirement system, to get credits in the WIP as a best management practice, while also meeting some of that commercial need as well.
So could this be used in under spray irrigation system for nutrient management plans?
You wouldn't even need irrigation.
Yeah, but if I had irrigation for a spray irrigation system
Mhm.
or wastewater system is what I want. This irrigation.
Oh,
Because what you said is it's a year round problem.
oh, it's perennial. It comes back every year, but it's seasonal. It's got a growing season just like every other grass and all.
Okay, so it's not something that would be a winter crop that could be
Right.
grown as well.
Right.
Just looking at it about me as far as
No, but that's
what I
great.
use.
That's a great alternative. I mean, for nutrient uptake, it's low demand, but if you fed it, right, if you're looking to get rid of nutrient in some way, shape, or form, you could have a little benefit with that as well. The biomass production on it is enormous, and so looking at, I think we talked a little bit about carbon sequestration too, but I don't know if the science is quite there to back up the carbon credit side. But looking at nutrient uptake, with any crop over time still requires a nutrient load. And so if we can be getting higher quality, higher yield, whatever the case may be, trying to find that dual benefit. We don't have to use commercial fertilizer and give the farmer an additional benefit on the cost saving side. Then I think that's something we want to explore.
So because I'm just a blunt person, what obstacles have you run into with using this or you just never asked before?
It's a new crop to Maryland. Right now, the market is what's driving it. We have not seen, so Purdue is the only company using it right now. And what they do is they contract grow with a farmer, say we need 20 acres of miscanthus. They chop it, it dries, and it's used as a biomass replacement in chicken houses. So instead of wood chips, you're using miscanthus. That's where they're seeing the need right now, but I think right now, because it's so new, we've not had a whole ton of adoption yet, so the market is not quite there as a productive crop. So it's easier to put it in land retirement and let it go than to use this as an alternative. But we're looking at markets in Virginia and North Carolina that are craving it. And so it's a little bit of connecting the dots. We need to find some more information. We've got a meeting on Monday to start learning what they know about who wants it and how to get it there.
Okay. So you're looking at it for nutrient credits or trading for TMDL?
We're looking at it as the best management practice and on land retirement, or another best management practice that's going to fit that need. But again, in particular, we're looking at losing many, many thousands of acres to saltwater intrusion. That doesn't help our side of the TMDL when we're taking agriculture away. It's not helping our net bottom line, right? Our percentages of what our input is. If we lessen both sides of the equation, we still equal out. But if we can increase keep our same acreage and increase our nutrient production,
Absolutely.
then it would certainly help our side of things and keep farmland productive.
Yeah, I'd like to hear more about it as well.
Yeah, we certainly end up at the same thing as we start having more and more of these discussions. The Intergovernmental Commission is a fantastic host for it. But looking a little bit more specifically as we're getting information and working with parties at Extension and the university to find its market pieces. There's just a ton of opportunity with it. So we're wanting to charge pretty hard into seeing how we can, offer that as a benefit to our farmers.
$12 I'd like to see that. It's almost like a crop of bamboo or
Mm-hmm.
something.
I encourage that. Sure.
Is it native and how does it spread? And is that going to cause another environmental concern? I don't want to much everybody's property and they all round up the heck out of it.
Yeah, that's a great question, but I don't know the answer to it. But I've driven out to a couple of fields on the shore that do use it. It does not spread. You do have to plant it by plugs. And so this is non-factual, non-science-based, just what I've seen so far. It does not want to spread, and I think part of the control method is harvest before it goes to seed. So I mean, those are definitely pieces that we need to be concerned about, right? If we're putting in 1,000 acres of it, we want to only have 1,000 acres of it and not give you Marviscanthus if you're having to spray down through either corn.
So what does land retirement mean to you, like on an official way?
Do you know it's through the NRCS BMP code? I can look that.
Top of my head, but I can look at it.
I'm just thinking, like, when I think land retirement, I think something that I don't really need to mess with. Like, maybe it's trees, maybe so if it's needs to be cut in a year before it gets to seed.
Yeah, well, and I think that this other piece too is we've got to be a little bit innovative in what existing practice code there is. There's a list of a few hundred approved NRCS BMP codes. We apparently do not have our own set of codes except for a couple of specific urban practices that we've been able to define. So it would have to fit within the NRCS existing structure to meet the goals that we have within the WIP. So it's a little bit of, is this a perennial cover crop? Is this a land retirement where we're looking at that would be the only alternative? So this is what we want to get into. So I think there's a couple of different options on what is called in the nomenclature to make sure that it's fitting both what's actually happening, but we're also getting the nutrient production credit, right? If we're not applying nutrients or if we're applying so little nutrient, there's a benefit in that as well.
Yeah, for NRCS has it under a couple of different codes, but they essentially would essentially form it as sticky marginal and highly aggressive cropland out of production by planting permanent vegetative cover, whether that's shrubs, grasses, or trees, and then usually the agencies will usually have assist.
Okay, so it's specific to the heat versus the
Corrosive or whether it's like there's lots of reasons.
Yeah, all that said, it would be interesting. It would be interesting.
Well, I think particularly for the cross agency and getting other government partners involved into it, we can line it up for a presentation at the next subcommittee or full packet to really dive into folks who do know what the heck they're talking about. And
You saying it's better for saltwater intrusion areas because
it's tolerant to saltwater.
There have been studies done with plants that have highly salt, like highly saline areas, and they haven't noticed a significant decrease. So that's what I was.
I did see the pulse on bone. So if we want to get into our DNR topics as well, that option's on the table.
Can I backtrack a minute here?
What are you looking for with the PFAS impacts?
Sure. So I talked a little bit or alluded to, so I believe it was SB 732, the bill, Zachary and Jeremy and I coordinated on that a few times. It was a bill that would have established what an acceptable limit of PFAS was in industrial sludge, essentially biosolids products like is what it sought to regulate. It sought to regulate and limit the land application of byproducts of wastewater treatment facility for land application based on, again, an acceptable limit. And so initially the bill was written to say if it has more than 1 part per billion PFAS, it's automatically illegal to spread it on land. And then that was changed to 1 microgram per kilogram. And ultimately the bill failed. It did not pass in either chamber. But there are discussions about a bill next year that's more comprehensive, that doesn't just go after fertilizers or soil conditioners, or doesn't just go after pesticides, because that was a separate bill. But they're talking about a more comprehensive bill that covers a variety of products and basically sets new regulations for can apply it, how it can be applied, or if it can be actually be applied here in the state of Maryland. So I know Zach and I had a couple of conversations that we both sat on a panel together for a PFAS briefing. And so what we were looking for is just to figure out, in the midst of those discussions, I know that it seemed that there was an agreement on a bill based on that 1 microgram per kilogram definition, and the wastewater treatment facilities still weren't satisfied with that. They did lobby against it, and ultimately the bill was pulled, or just didn't pass out of committee. But I guess I'm wondering, does MDE have any plan to, between now and January, change on the state level what the standard is for an acceptable limit of PFAS?
And again, I just wanted, when you're talking, sludge application, that's through land. But with the wastewater treatment plants and the pre-treatment program, we are gathering information now. The way the legislation was written, kind of didn't think about, we need time to process data that we gather before we set action levels. So we worked it out with the wastewater treatment plants with the pre-treatment program. And I don't quote me the dates, but I think it was like September 1st. They had to do sampling by September 1st, but we have to do an action level by July 1st, say. And we wanted to be aware of what levels they were seeing so that because it's complicated and we didn't want to impose just an arbitrary number that they never could beat either. So we felt it was more beneficial to get the data so we could look at it, compare based on particular users, because there are particular users that are identified potentially as having high PFAS in their operation, whereas others, when they had to report facilities, they reported because they have had firefighting foam on the property or something. So where's the risk level? So I think we're trying to look at it in a more comprehensive approach of both the risk levels and the action level to be more accustomed to what we're seeing and what the process can handle. You know, some plants can handle the treatment easier than others, and some you can just eliminate the user. They have the responsibility, the industrial user discharging into a plant, but you're still going to end up with a component of some kind of a discharge there. So hopefully, I don't have the update where we are with them providing their data to us. I think it was May 1st they were going to have it all to us, and then within the next 2 months we were going to develop action levels for where we saw risk. So I don't want to quote numbers at the moment, but we're also working closely with land too, understanding that on its wastewater, there's also going to be the land application of sludge that they're going to be considering. So I didn't want to give you that much of an update, but I think we need to look at it in a more comprehensive, holistic view as opposed to narrowly just focusing on one particular industry or avenue.
Is and again, not the subject matter expert, but allow that. When we're looking at different operations and when you're describing different inputs, so you're talking industrial sludge coming out of, you know, high production areas is a separate wastewater treatment facility versus like DC water that's getting mostly predominantly residential sludge.
Well, all pre-treatment
Biosolid.
programs, the way it works for wastewater treatment plants, before we had like different counties, say, that had a pre-treatment program. Now they may have several municipal systems within their county, but the county was responsible for running it. We're going to change that process and make it specific to the wastewater treatment plant itself, identifying their significant industrial users that discharge within their plant. Right now, the onus has been on the ones that have the pre-treatment program to identify all significant industrial users. So if you're on a municipal system, if you are a industrial business, you had to identify, or they have work collaboratively, I hope, to identify what that may be. Some clearly could identify that they have PFAS in their production, and others, like I said, just to be safe, I think, claim it, where we may see those as kind of an insignificant source, or not needing the action level. So, and in the planning process, what they need to do is, once we identify action levels, it's back to the pre-treatment program to work with the industrial user to try to get some kind of way to manage or eliminate that discharge amount into the system. But understanding that that's the large scale view of things, we have the individual scale too. So the standards would probably apply as well. The other nuances are for groundwater discharge permits, which aren't NPDES permits. They're governed under the safe drinking water. So it's the groundwater that we do have to limit with. So we're looking at a couple different ways to work this through. But and we call it industrial user because that's kind of the general term of it. But it could be, a farm can be an industrial user depending on what the discharge is or what the volume is, or the use. So,
It's gotta be like chain dumps that goes into the.
well, they're under separate permit, but yes, that's another thing we're looking at in this whole viewpoint, as well as even in stormwater or runoff of property. Potentially that could have PFAS in it. So, and just as you explore things get bigger and bigger. Through the stormwater, we've identified place that uses PFAS that their emissions for their air ducts actually is concerning whether or not it's being emitted that way, and then when the rain hits it. So don't ask because you end up with 15 more projects in it. But so we're looking at it from a lot of different angles. So I just wanted you to know that it's not just in a bubble under a sludge application, So that's being explored more. And hopefully, within the next, we have a monthly meeting on PFAS through the agency, interagency, just within the agency from all the different programs. So we'll have land there, and water, and different representatives. So we try to get updates and stay on top of what each group's doing, and we work together on a lot of projects. So it's learning as we go, but at the same time, and I have an excellent, the Yender Chang, who's in charge of the municipal wastewater systems permitting. He just finished a state water, a national report on PFAS and where we stand with that. So he's definitely in the weeds of all the components that are tested for. He was, I think, one that was given the advice of one didn't sound like a good number to go with. I don't think you really want that. So between him and Bradley Baker and Adam, as well as Zach, I think we've got a pretty good team working on getting some numbers that are realistic.
Is his report published?
No, and it was a presentation. We had a governor's, National Governors Association. Maryland was selected for a work group. We did that. I don't know. Days are running together with me right now, but last year, I think, where we explored both for spray irrigation, wastewater, and sludge, looking at what other states have done. We've collected a lot of data from and learned a lot of experiences from other states. So we did a presentation to other states and speak, I think, of where Maryland stood and, what actions we were looking at. There was another one done, I think, by Ohio, for drinking water. And, just as a summary, because different states were selected to look in particular areas. One was on drinking water and treatment for drinking water. So they did a presentation like the week before, and then we did a presentation. So I can see what's available from that to share with the committee.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
And we are looking at putting more, I don't know if we're going to do a dedicated page just for PFAS, but we are looking at putting like our wastewater results, because we started sampling wastewater treatment plants in a voluntary basis type thing, just as again, to gain data. Then we focused on spray irrigation systems and we sampled for PFAS. So those results we're looking at putting on the website so that you can see the range of what we have and so forth. But again, you can't just look at a number and say, oh, that's a problem. You've got to look at the, we had one that a number came up high and we found out that they had just cleaned out their sludge out of that system that basically stirred up a lot of sediments that probably just out of luck was within a week of what we sampled. So we weren't really getting a true representative sample, I don't think. Since then, the numbers have been relatively low. So that was enlightening. But of course, our luck, it's like, and then other precautions that need to be taken, some of these systems, a spray irrigation system could be close to residential housing for drinking water. So that brings in the water supply division, or if it's private wells, us for drinking water quality and what you do for residents, which I'm sure you're aware of another area we have in the state we've been working with.
Thank you. That report would be interesting with me. Can see if we can get that on the agenda next. Next week.
Yeah. See what we can do to elaborate on that a little bit more for you. But again, just understanding that it's still in the research phases. We're not locked in on any numbers at this moment, other than 4 for drinking water.
The one number we don't have much choice on.
Yeah, and straight from that one.
Since we have DNR, we can bounce back a little bit. Well, I don't know if you have any insight into the first topic on our discussion, which was Sunday hunting. We are looking mainly for a deer harvest update from the 2023 to 2024 season, or DNR's plans to tackle Sunday hunting in general.
Sure. It's a 280-year-old section of code, and we're going to solve it this summer. First, my apologies for getting on late. We had this as 11:45 for our part. We have a DNR retreat thing today, so I misjudged the timing. But nonetheless, so we received a direction from the leadership of the Environment and Transportation Committee in the House, asking us to dig into this issue. I'd say the takeaway was figure out a way to make sure if the legislature has to engage on Sunday hunting again, that they do it one more time next session for the last time. It has become a really unwieldy, arguably difficult to understand section of the code, and they suffered that again this year. So the message we're getting is, you've got an interim homework assignment. Please solve for this. Our plan to that end is, we've had some internal discussions. We're going to convene a big stakeholder meeting. It's probably going to be, 50, 60 individuals representing maybe that many organizations in mid-June. We haven't identified the exact date and or venue yet. But mid-June, probably central, what we call central region for us. So that Owings Mills, Patapsco, State Park area where we've got some venues that might work. And, dig into the thing in a way that isn't, confined by the, 2 minutes. And, so yeah, this is a big task, but frankly, I'm personally looking forward to, dealing with it. It's been part of my career for 20 plus years. So yeah, we're kind of embracing it in a little bit of an odd way. And we'll have a little bit more in the way of guidance, in terms of what the expectations are of the State House. We have a meeting coming up in the next, I think, 10 days with, some folks there to give us a little bit on the way of sideboards, so we can navigate this perhaps a little more finely, understanding, again, balancing the interest of the legislative leadership against, where we think the State House is going to let us go, and then figuring out a way to get to an outcome that to fix this, fix in quotes, will require legislation. That could be really simple or much more complicated. But there's also some regulatory options as well as even some policy tweaks that could be built in here to help get us over this hump. So that's that part. I'll stop there, I guess, if there's questions, and we can talk about deer harvest.
How'd the season go?
Yeah, so this year, I think the agenda said 23-24. Our last season was 24-25. 24-25 was up. We killed 84,590 deer, I think was the number. That's a double-digit increase, a little more than 15% over the year prior, and sort of a steady bump up over the last few years. That doesn't necessarily mean there were more deer as targets. It definitely represents a slight increase in deer population in some areas that had seen double-digit decreases as a result of epizootic hemorrhagic disease, or EHD, or blue tongue. That I know our Farm Bureau friends and the ag community, the small grains community, doesn't experience this, but we did have significant deer population decreases in southern Maryland and the mid-shore as a result of that disease. For several years prior, those populations recovered. Deer hunters got into those deer, and it was a good season. We had some good weather that worked during prime time, and Sunday hunting plays an important role there. I mean, you've heard the debates. Some of you have heard them for years, but the reality is that the deer hunting community, whether on deer crop damage permits or regular hunters, they have a specific window of time. It is largely, for lack of a better phrase, this is a working class demographic. So they pick their days off really months in advance, and they tie them to prime deer hunting season. And if it's raining or nasty on a Saturday and they've got a Sunday window, they go, and our numbers reflect, over the last 4 years, there's over 5,000 deer taken on those Sundays just on crop damage permits. So some people say, well, those aren't additive because those deer would have been taken on Saturday. The data don't support that. The deer kill is driven by opportunity and access. 75% of our deer are taken on private land, so access is pretty good. So then it becomes opportunity, and that translates to deer hunters having an opportunity during prime time to take deer, and that's really that October to January window, to include those weekends. So it's part of what we're going to have to, thread the needle with in the interim discussion.
I know that we're definitely looking forward to Ag being a part of that discussion. I think Rachel mentioned that Cassie was going to be our MDA representative on those in the interim, but certainly good to see that harvest numbers were up. I tried to do my part something around. Well, I tried. But it's good to know that it wasn't my fault. It was EHD and Blue Tongue.
Yeah, I mean that was a rough ride for a couple of years there. If you're somebody who enjoyed the deer numbers at those higher levels, again, it's this is a scale that's pretty tricky for us. When the numbers are down, the hunting community and the deer lovers are, they're apoplectic, and the ag community is kind of like, we'll kill them all, or kill more of them. Whatever that thing is, get more of it out there. So again, it's it's a tricky balance, but I feel good that we've had enough time in the barrel on this that we will be able to get to an outcome that most people will be able to live with. Some won't. I will say this: it's been great to have our colleagues and peers in Department of Agriculture involved, because in the first decade or so, Sunday Hunting Conversation, it was really driven by the advocates from the stakeholder organizations, and we didn't have that sort of peer-to-peer conversation, which I think is really helpful, particularly in that House committee. So we're looking forward to that.
The last thing we had for DNR was regarding tree planting on state-owned agriculture land. So that's mainly in reference to the 5 million trees goals. I guess the question here is if we're using state lands and how it's being used.
Yeah, we've heard a little bit about this. Our very rigid policy on this is we are not taking prime ag land for this purpose. We planted the 1,000,000th tree here not long ago. That was not on state land. Well, I guess it was technically state land, but we've got an interagency team that collaborates on identifying potential planting sites and screens that very directly against the quality and the productivity of that land. So we are really looking at those marginal places, right? Field edges, or stream sides that have root competition and shading, more damage, right? Raccoons, deer, bears, whatever it is, they're generally on those edges. So in the end, I think you could actually make the argument that those strips of trees that used to be ag that are not part of that farm tenant's lease responsibility were probably not the best return on the investment in those spaces. So that continues to be our focus. Our farm tenants are important partners for us on the 500,000 acres that we manage, and that'll never end.
All right, so for the sake of time, so we have 10 minutes left. I'll just go to new business. Underneath this, we've got committee deliberation on departmental legislation proposal. So this is mainly just a notice for the committee. We're going to need to know in July if we feel that there are any initiatives and or priorities that have been discussed in the committees that warrant any departmental legislation that to move forward. And in that case, the July meeting will then be used to finalize those discussions, and then they can be brought to the full GICA committee in August. That being said, there's invitation for departmental priorities. So if you have any concerns or priorities, to please bring them forward for agriculture in the future meetings.
Said for the full committee meeting in August.
And then I can send you meeting invites. I think it's fun once, but then
And there's just one more subcommittee meeting committee that's
Okay.
prior to.
they're all on the first page of your agenda.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, are there any final comments for the good of the order? I don't think you have public comments, but I'll open up for public comments. Right, so I'm gonna request a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
There's a list on the back. There's a
Oh,
voting
there
member
the
list.
old,
Yes.
yeah. Shoot, I always like to make that motion.
I will make the motion.
Can I get a second to the motion?
I second it.
Thanks all online.
Two hours.